So there was a study by Morgan Stanley that was released that predicts that by 2030, 45% of women ages 25 to 44 are going to be single. So I'll say that again: by 2030, 45% of women will be single that are in the age range of 25 to 44. So I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. And, you know, it's really interesting, kind of what the dating market, dating culture has shifted over the years, even in just my lifetime, a few decades, but especially when you go and look across it after many decades or the last century, right? The It's becoming more of a social norm to be single going forward, and that's across both sexes. However, I do think women, when they're single, it's more so accepted. Kind of, there's less negative judgments, especially if she's attractive. But guys, if they kind of age and are single, even if they're a bachelor and still could get a lot of women, I think there's more of a negative connotation related to men being single, like, oh, he must not be able to get pussy, he must be weird, he must be gay, shit like that, right? So, yeah, I just wanted to comment on a few of my thoughts regarding this study, and then the contemporary society that we live in today. I think this is really a tip of the cap, if you will, or a nod to Western culture, right? I think this is obviously the study, I believe it was talking about America, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, Western woman versus foreign woman, right? That's why a lot of guys moving to Thailand, to the Philippines, those women, they're more embracing of family traditions. I think those cultures value the sanctity of marriage more. The divorce rates are lower in those marriages. I think dating and relationships in the familial structure is being torn down in America, and especially with the feminism movements and the rise of kind of woman empowerment today. I think I think woman empowerment is good, but I think it's kind of gone overboard to where it's now actually harming both men and women, right? I think there is traditional gender roles in relationships where the man should be more masculine, kind of the leader, if you will, and the woman takes kind of a more submissive, complementary role. But I think that's kind of been skewed. And if women want equality, then maybe they should work as well, right? And bring equally as much money to the table as well. So sometimes I feel like there are double standards um, in that regard as well. But that's a side note. So, anyways, I'm curious, what's dating like for you guys? Drop it down in the comments. What are your thoughts regarding this study that was released? And I also predict, and I'd love to hear your feedback as well. I predict that, with the digitization of society and the further technological advancements, AI, et cetera, I believe that number is only going to continue to climb. This is just my prediction, but I think that number will continue to climb through the 2000s, 2030, 40, 50, 60, 2070, right? At one point in time, maybe when we hit, 2100 or kind of another century from now, there might just be just a massive reform where people have seen that, there was just completely tore down in the family structures, and we kind of revert back to valuing. We see that didn't work. We see the issues it's created. I think the birth rate's going to continue to go down a ton. We may even run into population perhaps issues in a few centuries. And I think that's going to make people kind of have this great awakening and revert back to kind of the early 1930s familial structures, if you will. But that's just a hypothesis. But I will say with a great level of confidence that I predict this number is only going to go up into 2040, 2050, et cetera. And what's pretty interesting to that note is I heard this from someone, but someone typed into AI, maybe Chat GPT or a program like that, if you were the devil and you had to destroy the world, destroy society, what would you do? And AI came back with that they would destroy and tear down the family values. They would destroy familial structures, and they would basically put all focused and negative energy and destruction against the family. And I believe that's honestly what's happening these days. It's just not the same anymore. People have less people having kids, less people getting married, marriage rates down, divorce rates up. Um, you know, Endless options for people, always wanting to play the field. And what's interesting is I also want to comment on the age range of the woman in question. So 25 to 44. So me personally, obviously a lot of men prefer, the woman that would be in their 20s. and depending on your age, early 30s, right? But once women get 40 plus, let's be honest, not a lot of guys care about them that much unless you're way older. For example, if I was a 45-year-old guy, which I believe, knock on wood, that I'll still be very handsome, extremely successful, took care of myself. If I was 45, I would want to date women in their 30s, and even maybe have fun with if I was single, woman in their late 20s as well. But the reason I mentioned the age range in the study is because of women, quote unquote, hitting the wall. I think a lot of women remain single, especially the most desirable woman, by choice, right? In their 20s. And, they're always, they're getting DM'd by ballers, they're getting flown out, going on yachts, endless attention. Their value is at an all time high. But I think, obviously, as we know, women hitting the wall, once they hit 30, 31, 2, 3, 4, and they want to have kids, or their looks are kind of declining, they're kind of past their prime per se. They're getting just a little bit less attention. They have the pressure of the biological clock. Now they're, instead of always going with Chad and Tyrone, who they were banging around in their 20s, now they're trying to, find a guy to settle down with. And at that point in time, let's say those women are 36, 37, right? They've kind of hit the wall. We're kind of hoeing around, right? Overall, a low value woman, but she looks good, right? I think a lot of those women then become not single by choice, right? Because the guys that they want when they're 37, the 43-year-olds, like I said, who really have their shit together, or, the real 1% of men, or 5% of men, 10% of men, right? They are going to go with, classier, better women that aren't as old, look better, have less mileage, and haven't hit the wall yet. So it's a very interesting phenomenon from a biological clock, from a woman's standpoint, for sure. So again, guys, I just wanted to add a few of my comments regarding this study that was released. By 2030, 45% of women will be single, ages 25 to 44. It'll be interesting to see, what the male uh, rate of being single would be. I would guess it might be, 50%, 50% maybe, I would say. Um, but anyways, feel free to drop your comments below. Feel free to drop any topics you'd like me to react to and make a video on as well. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And I appreciate you tuning back into the channel.